button down there. The gray knob. All right, stand by. Here we go.
We made it through another work week. Now let's get home with some uplifting, spiritually driven conversation with our friend Matt Dukes. This is Higher Powered Radio.
Make a way, baby.
Welcome. It's Friday, and everyone's glad to be out of work. I can't believe it. It's been a whole nother week, and I've had a lot of time to think about all the stuff we talked about last week, and really kind of gave some thought to what we want to talk about this week. So I want to congratulate everyone that didn't literally go postal at work. I know that was the big talk when it was, when I was growing up, and it's ironic because nowadays you get mass shootings. So I know it was this obscure thing with, postal workers and the stress that happened because of that, but it's a sad state that we've grown to a society now where we can't actually really express ourselves or contend with the intensity of the level of stress that we got going on. So I think it's important that we talk about, again, the show, which is called Higher Power, and it's Higher Powered Radio for a reason, because I can tell you, for me in my life, it all stems from a relationship with God. And now, I don't care if you're an agnostic, an atheist, or what your faith is, or how you practice it, if it's the sunlight of the Spirit, or whatever you want to call it, that's okay, because it all pertains to that relationship. And so it's interesting to me as I see people, and as I was driving to the studio today, I watched traffic specifically, and I was on the phone, and I was talking to somebody, and I was describing the anxiety of people in and out of traffic, and who goes slow and who goes fast, and how that probably has been translated from the rest of what that looked like from either their workday, their last phone call, the last conversation with their boss, or the conversation they had with their spouse before they left the office. And I think it's interesting is we kind of delve into stress and the strength that it takes to actually contend or deal with that stuff. Because I can tell you, when I'm experiencing, that inner voice in my head, and I'm having that conversation I'm going to have with whoever it is that ticked me off, or whoever it is that I'm struggling with, how I start to discern who that voice is in my head that I'm having it with. Because I can tell you, more often than not, if I'm talking to myself, it's going to get worse, and it's going to get darker, and it's going to get deeper. And I can come up with all kinds of stuff that I don't want to do, that all of a sudden I'll catch myself in the middle of this conversation that says, oh my gosh, man, I'm already to the place where I'm becoming physical with somebody in my head, and we've had this argument going on, and I'm answering myself, and it never ends well. I don't feel good about it. I'm always having to calm myself down back after it. And it's curious. And if you want to call in and talk about this, if something's bugging you or bothering you, you're welcome to. The number here is 888-404-1010. And so it's 888-404-1010. And you can call. Or you can follow us on all the social media. I'm out there, and it's Higher Powered FM. And I'm Matt Dukes. But make sure that if it's going on and you're in traffic right now, you're able to calm down, pull over, take a breath, realize that nothing is permanent in regards to the situation you're in right now. Because I can tell you there's a lot of circumstances that I've been through that when you're in the thick of it, and when I'm in that middle of whatever that conversation myself is, or I'm in the argument with whoever it is that I'm face to face with, and it is escalating, nothing seems like it's temporal. Nothing seems like it's going to pass, because this is it. This is the make or break moment. And I can tell you, it's as we go through the day-to-day, the heavy stuff, the work, the coworkers, the bosses, the family, or if you're a stay-at-home parent, if you're a single parent and you're dealing with the money and the bills and the kids and the daycare, and then you're having to work, and then you're having to cook and clean and shop, and man, there's a lot to that, especially when all we get off of society is makes it worse. If it's how everybody's doing better and we really are falling behind, whether it's more about if you had this, things would be better. If you had that, things would be better. And there's no real hope in any of that stuff, man. We always get stuck in this place of it's all external. And the truth of it is it's none of that. It's all internal. And I can tell you, for me, the biggest solutions that I've ever found in my life, it is those moments that I'm able to step back, collect myself, look for that inspiration, and we'll talk at times about where that inspiration comes from. I mean, I don't know if that's going to be direct from another person that's going to reach out to you. I can tell you there's been divine interventions in my life where I've been at the edge, and someone miraculously has either called, come over, stepped in my office, stepped out of my office, or whatever that looks like. We all have those circumstances. I can tell you there's moments when you're in traffic, or I've been in traffic, when I'm all about that road rage, and it's just been something at the last instance that has intervened somehow, some way, that I'm able to go, oh my God, I was that close to the edge. And so how do we define that? How do we describe that? And frankly, how do I tap into that and have that more prevalent in my life? Because the truth of it is what I really need more of is that intervention. Because left to my own devices, man, I'm miserable. And I don't mean I'm miserable to the point that I don't have moments sublime, because I have had great times and a good life, and I've had trials, and I've had tough circumstances before, but it's always better when I can sit back and kind of contemplate the fact of, and I don't want to call it my mortality, but I can tell you, when I sit back and contemplate who I am in this world and in this universe, it never is as important as I always make it out to be. I can tell you, there's never been a circumstance where my ego, and I can tell you, my close associates and friends and family will tell you, I have a very healthy ego. I mean, I can tell you that's never been a question in my life. But I can also attest to the fact that when I get to the end of me and I'm struggling the most, and it's because of somebody cutting me off or going too slow, or it's like I talked about earlier, that last conversation before I leave where I'm at, or the one that I'm just scared to death of having when I get where I'm going, because those are just as terrifying, because I can't guarantee you that things are going to work out the way that I want. And that semblance or that anticipation of control never manifests itself. I can't tell you at any circumstances where things have gone the way that I've played them out in my head over and over and over again, as I lay there at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. the night before, or frankly, as I'm sitting in the car or walking in and having this conversation and trying to plan it out with somebody, that it's always come out that way. It never happens. I don't care if I've scripted out, and I don't care if I've written a pitch, and I don't care if I've had the conversation before. It never plays out. And so how do I then work through the process, or where do I get the peace and that comfort that comes from calming down? How do I learn to go from, and they talk about this with children and their brain development, and we talked a little bit about the brain development last week, but as children grow, they learn, they build expectations, they build this into a place of hope and of aspirations, and then they either have to learn to deal with the disappointment of the unmet expectations, or as we come down from this heightened level of anticipation and excitement, how do I come back to this place of normal? The issue with, for instance, and they've done the studies, scientific stuff with addicts and alcoholics, is that they never learn how to process those emotions. That's why they talk about when you start either getting high or drinking, you quit maturing emotionally, because you never learn how to come back to that place of serenity or peace or just normalcy emotionally. You're always either functioning on this heightened level, or you're functioning at this depressed level because you've always experienced unmet expectations. So I want to talk today, as we go through some of this other stuff, how we draw upon the source of power that intervenes in our life, how we start to develop that and mature in it, where that really comes from, how we can, when I say define, I'm not looking for somebody to give me a God in a box, because I can tell you, I'm just going to call him God because that's who he is to me, but whatever that power is in your life, if you can define it, it may not be big enough. Because I can tell you this, in recovery circumstances, they'll tell you need to get a higher power. And sometimes that may be the coffee cup or the doorknob or whatever it is. But if you're going to turn that doorknob, you better make sure that door's not going to get closed back in your face. Or that coffee cup runs empty, you may be out on your own pretty soon. So I just want to make sure that we don't get left to our own devices too often, because more often in life, that's where we get stuck. and that's where I end up having my meltdowns. That's where my mood swings all of a sudden go from a mild expectation to rage, because I can get from 0 to 100 real quick when all of a sudden I don't get my way, and I don't want to be left to that, or stuck to my stuck with my own expectations and not have the ability to find that peace and calmness. So we're going to talk about that when I come back, and we're going to go through some of this later.
Ramsey here. Listen, your heating and air unit.